Hey guys, Isaac here, and welcome to the Smithy, where ideas are forged, sharpened, and put to the test. Whenever there's a deep discussion, bold opinions, or just good old-fashioned laughs, we'll fire up the forge and shape the conversation. So please grab a seat and let's get to work.
All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Smithy. This is episode 8. I am your co-host, Josh, and I'm with my other co-host,
What's
Isaac.
up, guys? Isaac here, and now...
And we got a special guest, Jackson Edwards.
What an honor.
First guest.
Finally on the Smithy.
Finally on the Smithy.
Man, so I'm breaking the seal on on the guest list.
We finally got a third mic.
Yes. Changing the game.
That was my mic for the longest time.
Okay.
And then I bought this one.
And
expecting you to come on.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, we manifested it.
Man, so I've only listened to 2 episodes of the Smithy so far, but the only thing separating you guys from $1 million ad revenue is exposure. So
Exactly.
people spread the word.
Just gotta blow it up. That's all.
Yep.
And then we'll be balling. We can move out of this little tiny apartment complex.
Hey, I have dozens of followers. After I repost
dozens?
Yeah.
I got at
Literally
least
dozens.
48 followers. So.
Good.
Sweet. Well, I wanted to bring you on, Jackson, because Isaac and I both admire you. You were the youth pastor at Calvary Chapel, Melbourne, and you brought us both onto the youth ministry and also brought us into kind of, I guess, ministry. Because we're not full-time pastors or anything, but you kind of discipled us and brought us into teaching and preaching to youth and just serving. And you have qualities that I don't have, and that makes me really admire you. And so that's why I just wanted to bring you on. You're also a huge people person, very talkative. So
We're both fanboys of you.
Yeah, big Jackson fan.
Hey, keep going.
Keep hyping you up.
This is really nice. Yeah.
Well, the problem is, I think everyone hypes you up. Like, everyone loves you. And so every once in a while, I just got to tear you down.
Yeah, that's good too.
Humble you a little bit.
Sharpen me some. I love it. No, that's awesome. You guys, like, I don't care if it offends someone, and I don't care if it's not true. You guys are probably the 2 best leaders I ever had. So
nice.
If you're listening to this, you're a leader. Now you know who my favorites were and are. But yeah, you guys just it's insane. You're still doing it. Youth leaders don't last that long.
Yeah,
it's a really hard ministry. It's not rewarding at times, but sometimes it's the most rewarding. So you guys and your faithfulness is just out of control. And I got to meet with you guys regularly for a long time, and I just think it's so fascinating that. I look up to you guys. When we're together, I'm being sharpened by you. But I did just so much appreciate you guys' obedience and desiring to meet. Because I think with you guys, it's not like I'm going to impart something on you that is like, whoa, I've never heard that before. Whoa, that's blowing my mind. You're just going through the obedience of discipleship. Mm-hmm. And when we talk through this stuff, it's like that's how we grow. That's how we transform. Mm-hmm. Literally, like psychologists are saying that it's through vulnerability and authenticity to one another we grow. So you guys were just like, I was like, man, why are these guys meeting with me? Like, what can I do for them? But it's just the obedience to trusting God in His process for discipleship, and it's valuable. So it was awesome. We had a lot of really good years in ministry together.
So you're telling me confession from the Bible is actually way ahead of its time.
It turns out. It turns out. Yeah.
I always hear people was it psychologists are just affirming what the Bible has been talking about for the last thousands of years.
I mean, and it goes to any sciences. It always affirms what the Bible says. It's a common saying, or not saying, but someone I read a book on, he told me, or he said in the book, that scientists climb this mountain, but when they reach the top, they already found philosophers there. So
wow, that's so good.
The Bible already explains a bunch of scientific stuff. It's just science now proves a lot of things later on. So we just go through.
Well, it's like the first scientists were philosophers. So
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah,
sweet. Well, my first question that I had for you, so kind of in line with what I was saying. So you're like a huge people person. Like I said, people love you. You're very good at asking questions and making a conversation about the other person. And so is that something you feel like you've always, like a quality you've always had, or is that something you've grown into throughout your spiritual walk?
Yeah, you know, I used to be extremely shy, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what made me grow. Like, my mom would force me to do things that I hated doing. You know, she like used to like dress me up like Paul Revere when I was like 10 and prance me up to these like Republican parties. She was the president of the Christians for Christ Republican group. I can't remember the name of it. It was so bizarro. Definitely a homeschool thing. But a lot of people were a part of it. So therefore our local representatives were like, well, let me go speak at this thing and get a lot of pull from this community.
Right.
And so she dressed me up like Paul Revere and make me do Paul Revere's ride. And, you know, she'd like literally she had a custom Revolutionary War jacket thrown on me and like a 3-cornered hat, and but she went to the thrift store and got me a woman's blouse because it was all ruffly, and I'd be like, Mom, I swear to God, I'm running away from home if I have to do this again.
On your little fake horse.
Yes. And so it was endlessly. She wanted us to be. I think she wanted us to go into politics, you know, and she was almost like grooming us for that in some ways.
Yeah.
You know, would force us to be social. And it's really hard to force somebody to go and be, you know, engaging with someone, you know, when you're really intimidated, really worried. So, you know, I think I've grown into it, but I would say that I do have a God-given deep love that overflows from his love for me to others, you know, and I really love people, you know, and I know that's like it's weird to boldly just say that, but it's just being honest. Like, I love people. I want to bring out the best in them, and I'm genuinely interested in them. And I think some people do try to force it, but it's such a blessing when the Holy Spirit is just naturally doing that. You know, I hope that we can all get there. But yeah, it's some, and I think it's a skill you can grow into. You know, like asking good questions is something we should try to do. We should try to grow in our emotional intelligence, and I think some people need to read that book, Emotional Intelligence, because they are not fun or comfortable to be around. I think they're like off-putting to other people. You know, it's like, oh man, like in our community, we can point people to doing better with this stuff.
Yeah.
And like I guess I'll throw this at you guys, and this is a hard off-the-wall question, is we're part of a young adult community that...
Well, Isaac and I are, but...
Yeah, that's true. I'm not in here and there, right? I'm the old guy that comes in and wants to hang out with you guys and
that thinks he's still a young adult.
Yeah, look, you're keeping me fresh on the lingo. That's buns.
Buns.
I said the other night, I was like, man, that's criminal. You know, you taught me both.
That's a fresh one. I still use that.
Miriam, you told me, said straight to jail.
Yeah, straight to jail.
That's so funny, dude.
You gotta do the little handcuffs. You got
yeah, straight to jail.
Yeah.
So that's brilliant. Is that a Miriam original?
Yeah, she did that.
That needs to take off. But no, so I mean, like I walk into this room of people with you guys, you know, and it's very painful for me in a lot of ways. Like almost like I mean, me as someone who considers themselves a shepherd, like Jesus, you know, he looked on them with compassion because they were like sheep without a shepherd. It's like I think they have shepherds, but they're looking for something, and I'm scared they're going to walk away and not find it. You know, and so I get bummed at them not being able to find it. But then here's what I'm throwing at you guys is like, what's the responsibility of the community, and what's the responsibility of the person? Because in a lot of ways, it's like, man, I think we blame the church when the person needs to take more ownership. So, I mean, have you guys, I feel like you guys have expressed to me the pains of wanting to see this community bring people in and keep them and help them develop into who they want to be. What do you guys think?
I mean, for me, I would say I put more responsibility on the individual itself. Growing up, I never used to be social like this. It's actually something I had to like literally train myself and grow myself in. And part of that was I forced myself to have conversations. Wow. I forced myself to have friends. Like, I did pray for it though, because I did need the courage, and God was able to deliver in that. But I had to really force myself, be like, hey, I need to actually be like social. So I'm going to push and be the one that initiates everything.
Wow.
An example I have, like I talked with somebody before in the past, and they'll be like, man, you're always doing fun stuff, Isaac. It seems like everyone wants to hang out with you. And I was like, it's because I'm always constantly asking everybody. It's not like everyone's always asking me. It's like I'm going there, initiating. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's why I've learned. It's like for the individual, if you want to have friends, if you want to be part of a community, then force yourself in. Like, what else?
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, I think there's a responsibility on both sides. I mean, I think there is that, new person that will come to the, the young adult group, and then they'll be intimidated by the large amount of people there, depending on the size of the young adult group, obviously. But they'll see all the people there, and, everyone has their friends and they're talking and all that. Right. And then they'll just like slip out right after service ends. And it's like, well, if you're looking to make friends, like you can't do that. Right. You have to be intentional about, like, if you're actually there to build community and make friends, then make the effort to do that. You can't just show up and expect people to come up and talk to you. Like that was one of the things that I did when I moved here. Is I knew all of 3 people when I moved here, my in-laws and my brother-in-law. And so I knew, like, if I'm going to live here and thrive here, I have to make friends. And so I went to the men's group, the men's Bible study, the first time I came here. And I was thrown into an accountability group.
Mine.
Yeah. No, it wasn't yours.
Oh,
actually.
it wasn't yours? Oh,
no.
I thought was the second week then? Or
yeah, maybe it was the second week.
Yeah.
But yeah, that first week I was like, if I'm serious about this, then I just got to be honest and upfront. And so, like, in accountability, like, I was very vulnerable with people I had never met before, because they were being vulnerable too. And then I kept going after that. I kept, making friends. That's how I met Isaac and, everyone else. And then getting involved too. So, you have to make the intentional steps in order to build that community. But then there's also fault on the side of the individuals of the church as well, where it's very easy to, I mean, I'm guilty of this just as much as anyone else, where I go to young adult group or whatever, or church, and I'm like, I just want to talk to my friends and just want to catch up with my friends, and I don't really want to talk to new people or anything like that. And so I think the church in general needs to do a better job. And when I say church, I don't mean church as the institution. I just mean, like, just individuals within the church who can recognize in themselves so that they can do a better job of greeting new people and bringing them into the church. I mean, it's hospitality. Hospitality is a gifting of the Spirit, and not everyone's great at it, but that doesn't mean that you can ignore that side of the Spirit.
Yes, it's 2 ways. Yeah.
So yeah, I think everyone would do well to be intentional about building community within the church. So yeah,
if you guys had, this is hard, because I what I've always really respected about conversing with you guys and asking questions to you guys in regards to the ministry, like, I would like pick you guys' brains about stuff going on in the ministry, because I appreciate your wisdom. So if you had to point, and so where I was going with that is, you guys were in the dirt of the ministry. You weren't someone on the sidelines wanting to offer your input. It's like, no, you're in it. You're doing the work. So therefore, like, I just think there's so much more, holds so much more water there, right? And so with that, if you guys had to point towards something you want to see the community doing different, the church doing different, to take us from a place of, we're doing a good thing, but we want transformation. Where do you guys see, man, we can turn here and transformation can begin?
It's a deep question.
That's a very deep question.
and it's like, honestly, if it takes some pondering, we can just edit,
do a little pause.
Yeah.
Cut through. One thing that has really, like, caught my interest recently within the last month or so. I mean, this is kind of what sparked the Are We Becoming Catholic episode, was just seeing the criticisms of the Protestant church, but then not just the Protestant church, but also the non-denominational church.
Oh yeah.
And how we've lost so much touch with history and with tradition. And I mean, there's this guy on YouTube called Redeem Zoomer, and he's a mainline Protestant. I don't know what church he goes to, but he's like, he has this movement called the Reconquista, where he's trying to take back the mainline Protestant churches from, you know, the woke progressive Christians. But at the same time, he's also criticizing the non-denominational churches because they are not members of a mainline Protestant institution that is steeped in history and tradition. And I don't really agree with that, you know, just because you're not a mainline Protestant church doesn't mean that I don't think that means that God isn't working in your church. But I think we can still accept criticism from the standpoint of we need to have a stronger foundation in the history and tradition that brought us to where we are today.
Yes.
And I don't think everyone needs to, you know, become a theologian or a theological philosopher or anything like that. But I think we would probably do well to have a deeper grasp of the spiritual realities that are described in Scripture that all of these, you know, theological philosophers and church fathers have all thought through and have tons of writings about, you know, like, you know, conversations around the Eucharist, or you know, we've talked about the coming of Christ and the tribulation. Like, I feel like that's kind of touched on here and there in service, but you know, it's not really widely discussed.
Yeah.
Like for me, for example, right, we go to Calvary Chapel, but I haven't even read the Calvary Chapel distinctives, so I don't even know what is the what are the theological doctrines that our church was founded on, you know, which I take personal responsibility for. Like, that's something I should read. But I don't know that that's going to bring about
that's a good example. That's a good example.
Something that we could do better as a church.
Yeah, it's a good example. I mean, though I have been in some other churches where like not mainline, but they had more stronger views. Yeah. With Calvary, I do feel like Calvary's position is always in the middle of a lot of things.
Is that annoying in a way?
Yeah, it's kind of annoying at times, but
Is it in the middle meaning like, oh, we haven't made a decision on this, so like we haven't publicized.
Yeah, we don't draw a hard line.
Yeah, like not like a hard line. Like I think the only hard line thing was probably Rapture with Chuck Smith, but yeah, everything else, like when you have predestination and the other side of that, I think Calvary's kind of in the middle with that one.
What was it? Calvinism versus Arminianism?
Yeah, Calvinism, Arminianism. And Calvary would be like in the middle of that one. I've heard sayings that Calvary chapels are two Baptists for Protestant, or not Protestant, or two Baptists for Pentecostals and two Pentecostal for Baptists. So like they're always like in the middle of a lot of these things.
Yeah.
But that's just a side tangent.
But do you feel like that kind of taking a neutral stance on many things can lead to a lack of transformation?
I think so. Yeah. Like, I don't think you have to be too extreme with everything, but having like the spirit of willing to like really dig deep and really find yourself where you lie in certain options. I mean, obviously, one thing I do appreciate about Calvary is we stick to the core tenets like of Christianity, which is, you know, Christ is God, he died for our sins, and that we may have everlasting life with him, and that it's all because of him. All the work is him, not us. So like that's the core like Christian idea. So we're always there like on top of that. But there's some like tertiary things that, you know, could be stand to like Calvary could like dig a little deeper in and really expand on stuff like that. That will help out with people and communities. Yeah.
I think to add on to what you're saying about, and you know, because I've been at Calvary since I was 13, and I would say that I'm close with, you know, Calvary's in the community, like Vero, you know, Galilee, you know, Merritt Island, and got buddies at those churches. And I remember, do you guys remember how weird like 2019 and 2020 and 2021 were.
Oh yeah,
these are very strange cultural moments,
especially in California.
Oh my goodness, yeah, you would have so much to share with that.
Yeah,
and I think back of like, remember we did like the black squares being posted, on our Instagrams. Like I did that
in solidarity.
Yeah, and I would never do that now. You know, I don't feel the need to virtue signal.
Yeah,
you know, like we all felt pressure to do. It was a very strange time, and I remember. So why I'm bringing this up is Calvary doesn't take like a hard stance on certain things, and we also don't address certain things.
Yeah.
And I remember being, you know, it's kind of, you know, what, 5 years ago now.
Yeah. Being
very frustrated. Like, we got to say something when really everyone was saying something. And about take the George Floyd situation, for example. In Calvary, like, in the Calvaries that I am like friends with and connected with, weren't really saying anything. And at the time I was frustrated by that. But looking back, I see there's a lot of wisdom in that too. You know, at the time I was like we have to say something. But as that time has aged, I think that, whoa, like you have to be so led by the Spirit. And I guess I still need to work on that conclusion. I just know at the time we didn't say anything. I wanted us to say something. And then later I do see the wisdom of not feeling like you have to do everything culture is saying you should do in order to appear righteous. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Because I don't have an answer of why. Like, I got to process. Why do I think that's wise to not do? Do you guys think, no, we should address stuff like that? Or, like, do you think, like, no, like, Calvary's not going to, like, ride the cultural wave, and that's good, you know?
There's always wisdom of, like, holding your tongue before you speak about anything. It's always good to be praying about it and really, like, seeking the Holy Spirit to guide you when you talk about things, especially when it comes to, like, the political sense, because it's very, like, volatile there. You have two extreme sides, and it'll be hard to, like, reach everybody if you get too deep in politics with certain topics. But I think, like, for Christianity, for, like, our church, the stuff that we should always be focused on is stuff that points back to God and be 100% about. So, like, I mean, I'll be a hard stance when it comes to, like, the abortion talks. I did appreciate Brian Saylor when he talked about that at the Harbor, if you guys remember that, his teaching, and it was very bold, and he actually had the teaching right after Roe versus Wade was removed. So, like, I was really appreciated, like, you know, as Christians we should be on the forefront of, like, things that do go against, like, our values and stuff like that, and be bold when it comes to that. When it comes to more of, like, the political sense, and the church is, like, split half and half on certain topic and ideas, there may be some wisdom to have to be like, is it worth opening that can of worms now, or is it worth causing this disunity, or is it worth it to just not cause, or to have more unity instead of disunity when it comes to things like that?
Yeah,
I think it's based on context.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't even remember what the Black Squares was about. Was it just like a?
I think it was Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, was it just a BLM thing?
Yeah, it's like you said, it was solidarity. Like we're with you.
Yeah,
you know, which is good.
I think it's very context dependent. I think in that circumstance, like, it's. I want to say it's so obvious that racial discrimination is an anti-biblical value. So obviously the church is going to be against that.
Yeah.
Right.
Or it should be obvious anyway. So why would the church need to put out a statement explicitly stating, especially when it's so politically charged? And there wasn't, I mean, this is going to get political, but I really don't think that there was that was not a matter of racial discrimination. I don't think that it was. And it became a matter of racial discrimination because people called it that. And that's where the whole BLM movement kind of sprouted from. But on the topic of abortion, right? Like, no, that is very clearly an anti-biblical value, abortion. And there was really a significant issue, and there still is a significant issue of children being aborted. And so that was a real circumstance, and I think that's something that the church does need to be at the forefront of, because there are actually millions of babies being killed due to abortion.
Yep.
And so I think it kind of depends on the context.
Yeah.
I mean, like the Catholic Church, for example, put out a statement against, Trump deporting all the illegal immigrants in the United States, saying that, well, I mean, I don't know exactly what they said. I won't quote them, but I think it was something along the lines of, we shouldn't be deporting them, or it was like the church was providing resources to illegal immigrants to kind of help them during this time. And there was a lot of conservatives that were like, no, that's not right. You shouldn't be doing that. And so that's kind of like a situation where I kind of see both sides of like, well, they are here illegally, so they should be deported. Romans 13, submission to government authorities. Like, there's a clear legal precedent for them to be deported. But then on the other hand, from the Christian, or from the like empathy point of view, and like wanting to help them as a person, someone created in the image of God as well, like you want to help them. So that's kind of like a tough gray area, I guess. So
yeah. You got something?
Well, I just got a solution for that. Ready? We could deport them, but give them first class tickets.
Fly them on Gulfstreams back to El Salvador.
There's the hospitality, but they're still going back home.
Yeah, hey, that's very good. Well, I think that an area I'm growing in and trying to learn is that church should have an influence on culture.
Yeah, we should be at the forefront of culture.
And I went through a season of saying, don't, and this is cliche, don't be surprised when the world acts like the world, and like, it's like, hey, they don't know God. They don't know Jesus. I can't expect them to behave a certain way. Almost like they let them do what they're going to do because they haven't submitted to Christ yet. Right. But it's like, I follow Theos University, like Nathan Finocchio, and I think he's done a really good job the last few years of saying, no, anytime a Catholic missionary has gone into a culture and planted, a church and a monastery, that culture has tremendously improved, with, just the treatment of people, the rights of women, and even on economic levels, places thrive when the gospel is spreading. Like, it does help the culture. So I'm kind of learning is like, oh, like we don't, like you're saying, we should actually be at the forefront of influencing culture and not saying, kind of being passive. It's like, well, like, they're not safe, so what do you expect? Yeah. I can't legislate morality. Voting.
But you can. The whole Constitution was written for
exactly.
What was that, Jefferson, that said the Constitution was written for immoral and religious people? So it's like inherently founded upon Christian principles.
Oh yeah, I mean, most of the founding fathers were Christian,
right? Yeah.
Everyone always points to like the two or three they're atheists or just agnostic, but then there's literally 50 other ones that are devout Christians that literally loved God and devoted their life to God. I mean, the early like group of founding fathers would actually like meet together first, have a 2-hour prayer session, have a 1-hour session for Bible study or church, and then talk about business about the country.
Right.
So
well, I mean, you look at who the judges in the Supreme Court. That does matter. That has been crazy since 2016. Like you guys keep mentioning, and we keep mentioning Roe versus Wade. Like, that's like, I never thought we were ever going to see that overturned. But it is interesting too. A lot of people. I don't know. We're gonna see nationalism's also, Christian nationalism is also a problem. People can.
But I'm a white Christian nationalist, Jackson. So
hey, I know. How's that going for you?
I'm a tall white conservative, heterosexual male, college educated. I am the enemy of culture.
You're such a
Christian too, actually.
Yeah, and maybe I'm making us go on a rant now. And maybe we should edit that. I don't know, right?
Took us down the political route.
Yeah, we'll circling back though to the Calvary addressing and the hard line things. Pastor Mark did put out a video, and it wasn't good enough for a lot of people. And Calvary's got a huge influence. We're a mega church in a small town, and there was so much trolling and hate on Facebook after that video, and everyone posting, say his name, right? It was like meaning George Floyd, because Pastor Mark didn't say his name, right? But I think was that something trending across the nation about saying his, okay. So that was happening there, and I was like, man, there's people I saw trolling Pastor Mark and Calvary that I bet you if they went and looked back and like they felt justified in that, they're probably pretty embarrassed they did that. I don't think that stuff has aged very well.
It was a very deranged time.
It was
2020 crazy.
So what do you expect when everyone's all like cooped up inside?
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden this starts happening.
Right.
It's like you create a
bunch of keyboard
disaster.
warriors.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's the other side of it is like, I felt there were people in my community who weren't comfortable saying Black Lives Matter, and that's like, okay, let's zoom out. Who cares what the right or left is saying, the Christian or non-Christians are saying? I can think for myself, so I'm going to think for myself right now. Black Lives Matter, they do, and I'm comfortable saying that, And I remember getting hate for people of like you can't say that. It's because it's part of this organization that's not good. It's like, I don't really care. And then everyone's so quick to give the caveat of like, well, Black Lives Matter, but I don't mean the actual organization, just the idea. It's like, how much was that like rhetoric going on of like Black Lives Matter, but just not, I don't mean the organization. It's like, we all were like politicians for a time, but with that, I was arguing with people about like, you can't say Black Lives Matter. And they were just, saying all lives matter, but the point was, and I absolutely think we should edit this. This is just for us now, right? But the point is there was a black man that was murdered in a way he shouldn't have been. Matter of fact, right? Like that was wrong. That's evil. And there were a lot of people who were extremely pro-life, like people who protest abortion clinic that I know, I'm friends with, they're in my family, right? That were so against Black Lives Matter and didn't want to say Black Lives Matter. I thought it was horrible, this Black Lives Matter movement. And my point with that was my criticism of them is I'm not going to go when you're outside of an abortion clinic on the public sidewalk protesting the abortion clinic and you're doing something you feel led to do, which I respect hugely, right? I'm not going to go up to you and say, hey, get those signs out of here. All lives matter. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's like we're intervening at an injustice, which we should do. You know what I'm saying? So it was just so bizarre, like time in history. It's like they were offended about people who say Black Lives Matter, and it's like well, a black dude just got killed in a bad way, in a demonic way, right? So, but we should not be okay with that, and we should not be okay with babies being aborted either. But I'm not going to go and trash you for doing something you feel say, hey, all lives matter, get that sign, like get that pro-life. Babies, like Matt, are you guys with me on that? Like what do you guys think? I know I'm getting very passionate about this. Right?
Yeah, it's like a very different turn.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? How far are we gonna cut into this?
Yeah. We can bail, but you guys challenge me on that, right? If you think there's anything there,
I think. Probably some of the part of the reason that people are like will be afraid at times was either the culture was so canceling each other like tremendously. If you say one wrong thing, boom, you're out of our group.
Yeah, we're gonna get canceled because it's podcast.
Yeah, right probably. So. 8 episodes strong. But not only that, but I also think because of a lot of riots and stuff like that throughout the whole nation, it created that disdain in people's mouths. That's why they're having issues about saying stuff like that, saying that Black Lives Matter. That people had issues like that because they were seeing all the news, and especially the news was very like lopsided. You go to Fox News, you see just riots in LA. You go to CNN, you just see like riots, but it's more peaceful there, and they're trying to like be like very
mostly peaceful protests.
Yes, most
that
peaceful
was like
protests.
the tagline that they used.
So I think because of that, it created some people on the right side will be afraid to say stuff like that, is because they associate it with riots and stuff like that, and that's all they saw because that's all Fox News like posted. Mm-hmm. My personality and my reasoning is get off the online. Stop caring too much. Like you can care to a certain point and like pray about it and talk about it, but I think people need to stop thinking they have less of a say in society and just care more about their personal lives and care more about just how they infect people in their every day-to-day life. Because if you think we all have soapboxes, then no one's going to listen to us at all, because we're all on top of soapboxes. So like I feel like this is where I'm pushing back, like the idea like sometimes we need to speak on different things in the culture. We should always do it wisely at times, because if we're just going out there guns blazing and screaming, later on in life, like you said, it may be a bad idea later on as we go through. We think back. So it's always good to have wisdom, and the wisdom I think is always going to God, going to Holy Spirit, and asking Him like, hey, should I speak on this or should I not? Like, is the Bible very clear on this or not? Or Holy Spirit, give me the words to speak, give me the wisdom to speak, so I may be able to reach others and not be so divisive, but be a way to be a bridge in the middle for a lot of conversations. So that's how I kind of see everything. It's to tie everything together. I think it's always important to be informed and to always like be understanding what the culture is going through, but also be very wise in how you speak. One thing my dad has always taught me is always be strategic with your words, especially in business. Like I don't go to customers and blurt out every little single thing, because it's not wise. I'll keep things to myself until I need to go and speak. I mean, an example my dad had where he was like working with another company, and apparently there's this engineering issue, and his boss wanted to go and tell the customer, we screwed up, something happened, this is not good, because he's thinking, we gotta be truthful to a fault of explaining that. And my dad's like, no, don't do that, because then you're gonna make the customer think that there's that we have an issue here and we don't know how to design stuff. So like, let's first try to figure out the issue first before we go tell, because then we can easily come with wisdom and be like, okay, this is how we're going to solve it. But just going out there and acting like it's all end of the world, then it just creates more of a distrust, or just creates more of a scarcity or a problem that people have. And I know I kind of brought into the engineering sense or into business sense, but it goes into regular society. If we learn to like hold back our words a bit, think about it, and then speak it, be strategic, then we can not get ourselves into avenues where we might have to rethink what we just said 10 years ago, 5 years ago, because we thought it was the most important thing then now, but now thinking about later on, maybe it wouldn't be wise at all.
Yeah. It's a very like, I don't want to say neutral, but it seems neutral in a way. And what you just said reminded me of the story, was it Joshua, where the Israelites were coming into Canaan and they were basically slaughtering all the peoples that were in Canaan because God told them to. And I think it was the angel of the Lord, or likely Christ, before he came to earth as a man, came to Joshua, and Joshua asked him, are you for us or are you against us? And the Christ, or the angel, essentially says neither, I'm for the kingdom of God. And that kind of just makes me think that as believers, especially as those of the church, we were talking about the church is to be at the forefront of culture. Well, to be at the front means you can't be aligned with any one side, because then otherwise you're allowing yourself to be pulled by that one side, and you're no longer leading, but you're following. And so as believers in the church, what we're to do is we are to look at a specific issue, which is why I say I think it's it's contextual. We have to look at it through a biblical lens, discern through the scriptures and through the Spirit what is God's desire for this, or what is God's will in this, and then lead from that standpoint. And what was I going to say?
Well, what you're making me think of, and it might jog your memory of what you were going to say, but we're not going to usher in the kingdom of heaven through a political side.
Right.
Choosing a side.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say. Yeah. So on that point, right, people will always say like, oh, well, or not always say, but I've heard it said before, oh, if Jesus was alive today, he'd be a Republican. And it's like,
well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna,
No, I'm just joking.
But not on the basis of like, oh, the Republican Party is God's party, right? It's more so on the basis of Christ. Okay, I'm not going to say Christ anymore. I'm just going to say for myself, right? My values are established and founded on the biblical principles. It so happens that the Republican Party aligns with my values, and ergo, I am a Republican, right? It's not that, oh, the Republican Party, that's the right one, so I'm going to align all my values with them. It's like, no, there is the biblical standard is the first standard, and then it's the political party affiliation after that. And marriage is a similar way. So culture has defined marriage as something that the government has authority to establish between two parties. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case. If you have a biblical understanding of marriage, you don't make the covenant before the government. You make the covenant before God. Mm-hmm. And what the government does is they recognize that covenant that you made, mm-hmm. and then they will recognize, okay, you have been married, and so we will honor that through our legal system, right? And so I bring that up because that's how I think that's how we're to approach politics as believers. Is it's God first, and then the world after that. Like the world falls into our biblical understanding, not we fall into the world's understanding of morality. Yeah. But on the specific point of when you were bringing up the Black Lives Matter phrase, mm-hmm. I was thinking of the All Lives Matter mm-hmm. phrase too. And I think they're both wrong to say personally. I mean, right. I'll start with the All Lives Matter first, in the sense that I think that the reason why people say that is it comes from a heart of rebellion, saying like, oh, well, you're stupid, and because you're saying that it's just this people group that matters. Really, it's every people group that matters, and so I'm going to get back at you by saying this phrase. Mm-hmm, yeah. And it's like, well, I mean, if you take that phrase at face value, yes, it's true. Right, but you're doing it for the explicit purpose of trying to get back at this mm-hmm. other person. And so if you are, like in marriage, right, if you and your spouse are fighting, you've already lost. Right. It doesn't matter. And so I think if you're already warring with someone in that sense, you've already lost, because you not only have you lost, but you've also lost that person because you've had the heart of rebellion and criticism against them. On the Black Lives Matter side, again, at face value, that phrase is true, obviously, right? And as believers, we have a non-discriminatory a view of people, because we believe that all people are made in the image of God, and so everyone has inherent worth and everyone is the same before the eyes of the Lord, right? But we also have to remember that words have meaning, and words have affiliation, right? And so if you want to get very political, for example, the swastika was not originally known as the symbol for the Nazi party. Originally, it was known as a Celtic symbol. I don't remember what it was, but it wasn't bad, right? It was it was something different. Right.
But when I got it tattooed on my chest, it was because of that.
because of the Celtic.
My Celtic background.
Yeah.
Nothing to do.
We aren't canceled for everything else we said. That'll do it right there. But yeah, I mean, like, so... But once the Nazi party came around, it was ascribed a different meaning, right? So now the swastika means something way different than it did back then. Or like the word gay, right? Mm-hmm. Meant something way different in the early 20th century, but now it has, homosexual affiliation. And so I think the phrase Black Lives Matter, while at face value, it is a problematic phrase. It has become a problematic phrase because of this movement, and that I think that's where a lot of the hesitation is being like it became such a politically charged phrase, and it was also associated with all those riots that damaged property, killed people, and so much more. And I'm not saying everyone that protested did those things, but let's be honest, that happened, right? And so I think I think there's a lot of wisdom in what you said, but there's I get what you're saying too. Like we have to stand for justice, right? But let's not let the culture define what we're going to stand for. Like let's look at it from a biblical point of view. Well, and like start there.
Again, have enough wisdom to be able to lead what everyone's talking about.
Right.
Yeah. And you use the term at some point like a keyboard warrior. It all comes down to people get really fired up about certain topics that are important, but what are we doing about it?
Yeah.
So you're just doing your life of you work, you go home, you buy the things you want, you do the things you want to do, and you get so fired up and so passionate. But what are you doing to impact the community with that passion? Yeah. John Tyson, he said recently that young people that we're very guarded with our time, which is wise, and we're guarded against burnout. Like we are an anti-burnout generation, even though some of us are probably still super burnt out, right? There is a lot of conversation and dialogue about like a wellness day and things like that. I don't want to overcommit. That's kind of like very trending. But what John Tyson explains is that these people, they want to guard against burnout, but they've never burned. They've never burned for anything, and they've never had the late night pursuit of something great. But they're so guarding against burnout, and I think that, man, it all comes back to, from this cultural moment. Mark Sayers says they want the kingdom without the king, and so that is a problem with certain, cultural moves of attempting to usher in justice apart from the gospel and Christ. Is you want the kingdom without the king, and it's not going to last. It's just self-righteousness, and it will go nowhere, and nothing will change. So. Yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, we're gonna reel it back. End of our little intermission there.
Yeah.
So we're gonna pull it back from politics. We're gonna talk about you instead, because that's why we brought you on.
Yeah.
So,
well, that first question I have to ask, Jackson.
Okay. You can ask your question.
I gotta do my due diligence here as a investigative reporter, and there's been some reports that you tend to climb out of the windows of cars and start barking at other cars. Would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah.
Explain yourself.
I mean, I think that it's like people I know or strangers.
Dude, you did to me like 5 times so far.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why that's like my reaction to my homies. Like we ain't puppies, we dogs. That's all I have to say about that.
We ain't puppies, we dogs.
That's it. Enough said.
There you go. That's a new reel for us to post on Instagram.
God. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you kind of alluded to this earlier. So you're about your early life, but I've heard you say before, so your parents weren't believers when they first got married, right? But then they like just became believers. Was that when you were born, or like when your first siblings were born, and then they so you grew up in the kind of like an early Christian household?
So I'm one of 6 kids, and I have 3 older siblings than me. And the same year I was born was the same year that my parents gave their lives to the Lord.
Okay.
And were radically saved. My dad had committed adultery and actually got another woman pregnant. So I actually have a brother out there I've never met who's like my exact same age.
Oh, wow.
Which I'm actually the only sibling of all 6 kids that knows that. So I really hope they never hear this. So,
okay, we'll cut that out, I guess.
I don't care. But if they hear it, maybe they're supposed to hear it. But and honestly, like when I look at some of the struggles my parents had, I learned this probably 5 years ago. And when I look back at the struggles our family went through, like financially, it didn't make a lot of sense. Like we were dirt poor, but we shouldn't have been dirt poor, you know? And it's because my dad was probably paying child support, you know?
I see.
And, yeah, just the, like, I've always been extremely open and vulnerable in my teachings and sharing with people about the father wounds I have in my life. A huge lack of affirmation from my dad and discipleship and things like that. And it just, like, knowing what I know now makes a lot of sense. I think his head was elsewhere. He's probably super torn, you know? And so it was a gnarly time, you know, having parents who are probably my age now, probably like 36, learn what it means to walk in the way of Jesus while raising kids, while coming out of that incredible pain and suffering and loss of trust. You know, I can't imagine the trip that was on my mom, you know? And yeah, we had a very, very interesting upbringing. You know, we started a church the same year my parents were saved, right? They like went to this guy who was a godly man, and they're like, hey, we believe in you so much, we believe you should be a pastor, you start this church. So people who have been saved for a year should not be starting churches, first off, right? It's got cult status written all over it. And with that was, I think, a lot of pure hearts, but a lot of misplaced zeal. And there was just ultimately, like, you see examples of the elders can't be all your cousins and uncles, you know, that's going to go. And tragically, we were very much a politically driven church. And a lot of people would argue, no, we're just being obedient to the gospel and it's what we should do. And, you know, I respect people who are in that realm, and I think Christians need to be in that realm and are getting back into that realm. You know, I heard a church planner say the worst thing we did is tell all the great godly men and women with leadership capability to serve in the church, when really they need to be spread across the engineering communities and the political communities, right? And in the church too. And with that, I got a front row seat to, like, just gnarly leadership and a lot of politically driven stuff. We would protest abortion clinics all the time. Disney was starting something in the 90s. The 90s were very strange times in history of cultural movements happening. And it was really scary, I think. Our Christians, they feared the Democratic Party. You know, they thought Bill Clinton was the Antichrist, literally. There was, I don't know what her position was, but Janet Reno was very high up in the political realm, and she was a part of the Waco incident. And I don't know if you guys know the story about Waco, Texas in the 90s. It was the cult in Waco.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of that.
David Koresh. And there was polygamy going on. They were using the Bible to do that. And they weren't paying taxes, right? They were like, we're a self-sustaining group. We bought this property in Texas. We're not a part of the government anymore. And there were reports going on that there was child abuse, I believe, going on. And I don't know if there was. There's a gazillion documentaries about it now, incredibly fascinating. But they had a lot of weapons on this compound.
Oh, wow. And
military came in and it's like, we hear there's abuse. And they're like, we're not coming out and we're not handing these kids over to you, you know. And they ended up with tanks shooting, like, tear gas out of the tanks into the compound. And the tear gas was supposed to bring the people out, but it caught the building on fire. The tanks are, like, storming through the cinder block walls and running it over. It just got crazy out of control.
Yeah.
And so with that, my parents, like, were like, you know, we bought, like, property and opened up bank accounts in Belize so we could retreat to Belize, goodness. Which is like, whoa, we're going to retreat to Belize for safety? Like, that's crazy.
You got offshore bank accounts?
Yeah, they did. And a lot of that was because my youngest brother, Toby, was adopted. His mom was a stripper. And she got pregnant and was going to get the baby aborted. And there was an RV across the street run by these Catholic ladies with, like, ultrasound equipment in there. They're like, hey, we offer free, like, prenatal care. If you, like, across the street from the clinic. Yeah. She went in, saw an ultrasound of Toby, and was like, oh my gosh, there's a human inside of me. You know? And she said, I want to put this baby up for adoption. They reached out to my parents. My mom had 3 miscarriages at this point. So not only was the property to retreat from the States if things got sideways, but also they caught wind that this mom who was, on cocaine and stripper and stuff was going to try to get Toby back, apparently. And I was like, that's my baby now, which is, that's heavy. Yeah. But they were also going to bail on the country if they try to take Toby back. So this is my life. This is my upbringing,
Wow. Every time I talk to you just got more and more crazy stories.
Yeah.
Pandora's box just
no kidding, dude.
Yeah. And you guys have heard the Y2K stories. But 99 was very bizarro, with the potential software and hardware issues coming with the 2000 and the computers not being able to handle it. And we were doomsday preppers. We did have a bomb shelter. My dad bought 5 AK-47s. He had Kevlar helmets, and it was so heavy and gnarly, dude. We had tons of canned food. We had chickens and stuff. And the bomb shelter was actually not built for anything going on with Y2K. That was actually built during the Cold War by my grandpa, which was on our property in Grant. Still there, incredible. And and so with that, them being baby Christians, they were so influenceable.
Yeah.
And, so I think young Christians can get really into end times and rapture.
Yeah.
I think the fault of us maybe is we're not looking forward. I think it's Hebrews that says Jesus coming for those who are eagerly waiting for him. Am I eagerly waiting for the return of Christ? I need to grow there. So I'm lacking that. But sometimes believers are so end times driven, to where it can become very strange, as it did in my family. And my mom told me this. She said, when the government comes to take you away from being a Christian, run away and let them shoot you so that they don't arrest you and make you denounce your faith. And I'm 10 years old having to process this, right? That's very traumatic, very scared.
Yeah.
I remember my dad, we had walkie-talkies, and we were on our property, and he's like, man, so when they start coming in to take you guys away, I need you to get the chainsaw ready to be able to saw some trees down to block the road so that we have enough time to retreat into the woods. And I'm just like, Dad, I'm 10. I'm just trying to get an oatmeal cream pie right now. I can't have this dialogue, And so it was just huge anxiety.
Yeah.
Imagine a 10-year-old having to deal with that and process that. And I remember it was September 9th, 1999, that the power went out in our community. And I, in my dumb 10-year-old chubby brain, I was so husky at the time, thought that it was 9/9/99 that they decided to cut the power early or something. And I'm home alone with my 2 little brothers and immediately go into doomsday panic mode. I got all my dad's guns and put them in our van. I got all...
At 10.
Yeah, at 10. I shoved my little brothers in the van. I was carrying around a steak knife, in case anyone came on the property.
Ready to get someone.
I shoved 21 chickens and 3 dog crates. So I had them think, how, dude, how tight those chickens were packed in these dog crates? They were shoved up against the metal, bro. It's not a good scene. Even how PETA.
Would you have a ring camera over your garage?
It would be worth $1 million. and the funny thing is I was low key scared of these chickens, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't, even when it was my turn to feed them, I would just chuck their feed through the gate, which means they're probably only getting 20% of their food when it was my day to feed them. And I was so scared. I was running through the coop without shoes on, trying to get them to poop all over me.
Shoes? That's great.
And I'd get them in the dog crate, and I'd shove one in, but then 3 more would run out, and it was just so gnarly, So a lot of anxiety, a lot of trauma to work through there.
Yeah.
I remember we were protesting at Barnes & Noble one time, because they actually were doing something extremely gnarly in the 90s. It came out that child pornography, pretty dark stuff, it was getting they were getting around child pornography protection laws by describing it as a form of art, and they were selling it at Barnes & Noble. So we were a protesting family, so we went out and protested that. But these witches would follow us to all the protests, and they would film us. And then they'd tell us that they were going to go home and watch the videos and with all their witch friends cast spells on us for harm.
Oh my God.
And I'm so young, right? And my mom would let them film us, and she's like, "It's okay, you're washing the blood." And I'm just like, "It's not okay," And yeah, it was in a lot of ways, we weren't protected at times, you know, and shielded from things a parent's supposed to shield their kids from. But with that, it's like, I'm so grateful from the standpoint of I've never been sexually assaulted, you know, and that is just so common. You know, the fact that my parents were able to keep me from that, and I know that's like such a gnarly thing to bring up, but it's like, you know, some of the people closest to me in my life have been from lack of protection from their parents. So at the end of the day, like I'm like, look, they gave me a biblical foundation. They were doing the best they could coming out of a dark circumstance of adultery. And, you know, I think that, man, you just learn the value of discipleship, and you learn the value of godly elders and godly leadership. We take a church like Calvary Chapel for granted when it's like not everyone is rolling with good shepherds. Yeah. And it can bring so much trauma in a person's life if they're trying to do church apart from the way I think God established the church.
Yeah. So I feel like someone else who was in your circumstance, especially with like everything you experienced at specifically the age of 10, seemed to be a very crazy time for you. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people would like run away from the church after that. Like as soon as they got independent freedom, they would, I'm going to go do my own thing. So did you ever experience that sort of season? And what, if you did, what brought you back? Or if you didn't, what kept you going in the faith after that?
I think it's just divine love from God that I never bailed on the church. You know, it must be his supernatural love and protection over me. Just from the standpoint, I've always believed Jesus was the way, the truth, and the life. Mind you, I didn't recommit my life to the Lord till August 11, 2011, which is kind of probably crazy for you guys to hear. It's like, I was a pastor a long time. Yeah. Like, we're only in, you know, like the year we are, like, so it's like, man, they laid hands on me way too quickly. You know, I've only been a devout follower of Jesus, you know, for this duration of time. Yeah. And so, but in that, man, I can't subscribe to the logic of that bad churches can make me bail on the church. Like we don't subscribe to that anywhere in life. Like if I go see a movie that I paid for and it wasn't a good movie, I'm not out on movies. If I go and have a bad dinner at a restaurant, I'm not out on food. You know, like I'm a Magic fan. Like you know what I'm saying? It's like that's my so I feel like this is my team for better, for worse.
And a Dolphins fan.
Dude, I could keep. Oh well, I'm a Dodgers fan.
Yeah,
so
that's
the only good thing.
Yeah, keeping you going.
I almost feel guilty for being a Dodgers fan. I don't know what it means. I'm a sucker for punishment. Don't know how to handle it when my team does good. But no, I mean, I believe in the church, and I believe that that's the bride of Christ and how we will usher in the kingdom of heaven. And so I don't have a lot of compassion for people when they talk about church hurt. Unless, obviously, like, you know, there's been abuse, like physical abuse, and there's emotional abuse and verbal abuse that's of Satan, you know, going on in the church. I'm against that. But I think I shared in the last time I taught at the Harbor is like, and this is not my own revelation. I think I heard, once again, John Tyson probably say it, but that most times when people come to his church, having left another church, it's just they were just challenged or confronted, and they didn't like that, and they got offended and left. You know, and people call that church hurt. That's not church hurt. That's actually church. Yeah, you know, that's the point of community.
Correction.
Yeah. Well, that's it. It's. I think, you know, like I'm a millennial, like right in the middle, right? And you guys are on the younger side of being millennials.
I think we're Gen Z.
Okay, you're Gen Z. Okay, so my generation, we can't take correction. Right? Like, and it's been a very bad thing. It's like, if you correct me, then it's just, that was inappropriate. I can go to HR now. You know, I've heard that this is happening. Like, that's crazy. Right? And there's a right way to do it. So let me like throw this back. You know what? I'm not going to, I think you guys ask the question.
Well, I think also like, it's not just like correcting, but also maybe like validation. You guys like tend to like want to be validated in everything you do.
Yeah.
We just talked about this in Romans 1.
Yeah.
It's like at the end of Romans 1 where Paul's talking about not only do they do these things, but they also like celebrate them or
Yeah.
Dang,
let me go
that
back.
cuts though. That's a heavy take on that verse, and I love it. But I'm also painfully receiving that.
I want to pull it up. I'm not saying this about you.
No, but I'm saying this like in general, or people like younger people nowadays, millennials, and some Gen Z too.
Yeah, but there's such a balance with that. Like we don't like validation for a child is like so pivotal in their identity, and validating of you're a son of God. That's how it should be, or a daughter of God. Like that's the validation we need to instill.
Yeah. Romans 1:32, Paul says, although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them.
That's it. I love it. Yeah.
So
I think
you had a question, Isaac?
Yeah, so going on, and like you said, a lot of that stuff at 10 years old, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But when you rededicated yourself to the Lord, who was that pivotal like person that like discipled you, or was it like many different people that discipled you that you could remember that like really helped you grow and like secure your faith in Christ?
Yeah, I would say the church probably like wasn't extremely intentional with that, but I remember going to the men's retreat and making a lot of really valuable connections there. Like extremely, like I remember there's a journal entry I have, and I talk about, hey, I met this guy tonight, Brian Saylor. God, I've been seeking godly friends. Like God, maybe he can be my friend. And it's like we were in each other's weddings. Like our kids are best friends, our wives are best friends. Like so much there. God, I've been praying for change. This is the same journal entry from that night. God, I've been praying for a place to serve. This guy named Pastor Matt, the youth pastor, was really like cool to me and so encouraging to me. I had like lost my virginity when I was 18, and it kind of was a moment that just happened. It wasn't like I was with a girlfriend and it just happened. Like it wasn't like, hey, we're gonna like have sex tonight, but turns out if you get two 18-year-olds in a bedroom and they're naked, there's a good chance they're gonna have sex. Right?
Wow, what are the odds of that?
Yeah, crazy. And I was really like, even though I was so far from the Lord, that was something that growing up the way I did was actually pretty valuable to me, is wanting to save sex from marriage.
Yeah.
And so I remember driving home and to Calvary and going down to the altar and seeking, just some sort of help for the shame I felt, But it wasn't until I was 22 at that men's retreat that the guy Matt, he had a Bible in the back of his top pocket, and I was just letting him know. I was like, man, I know I'm saved and God loves me, but I carry this thing. I'd never heard Romans 8:1 ever in my life. He pulled his back pocket out, read Romans 8:1. There's therefore now no condemnation for those in Christ Jesus. Burden lifted, gone, healed, right? And so I wrote about that, and he invited me to come serve with him in youth ministry. And he brought me under his wing, and I was such a, in a lot of ways, like maybe I am still looking for validation, and affirmation, and I'm wanting to be a people pleaser. And I pray the Lord sanctify me of that. But he caught me at a time of being 22 when that was extremely rampant. I needed a lot of attention, probably still do. You guys know I'm like loud and boisterous and stuff. But I also like if I could just, I guess reflect on that. It's like that's also who I am. So people shame me for that, to where like, man, Jackson needs a lot of attention. It's like, well, it's not like I dislike attention, but I am being true to myself, right?
Yeah.
And how God made me. I hate that word, true to yourself, right?
No, I think it's hilarious.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. You guys are cool with it.
When you're the only extrovert in a group of introverts, someone has to have the attention.
Exactly.
It's like you gotta have a balance there.
Right. But in that, like, I'm a very polarizing person.
Yeah.
Most people really like me and love me. Some people find me really annoying. Yeah. And they're wrong, obviously.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly wrong.
Bad
opinions.
Yeah. They're clearly on drugs or something. But yeah, so I appreciate you asking the question about discipleship. Matt was really patient with me, and really loved me and gave me a lot of opportunity I didn't deserve. And he told me, like, God told me you're going to be the next youth pastor. And I told him, no, I'm good. I'm starting this new career in medicine. and I got these ambitions and stuff. And he's like, okay, well, just see what the Lord does. And then I think that within the next 2 years, I was the youth pastor at Calvary Chapel in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm. So had you ever thought about becoming a youth pastor before he had brought up that point before? No,
I was still immature. I like with it, like I had buddies when I was in college going off to Bible college, and I was like, that's dumb. You know, like you guys want to be pastors, you know?
Yeah.
I was pretty critical of it. Like I even like, you know, in my ignorance, you know, I ended up relying on a salary from the church for a long time, but I was like, man, that's dumb. You guys get paid to do this, you know? Because a lot of ways, I mean, Josh and Isaac, you guys do it for free. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it is weird.
Who's really getting scammed here?
And you guys' time. You guys are paying to do it.
Yeah.
What is this?
You guys are getting paid?
Yeah. So never did I ever want it, you know, or think I'd ever do it.
So what was that wrestling like? I mean, clearly there must have been some sort of wrestling happening between when he said that and you said no to 2 years later when you had become the youth pastor, because you were already an RN during those 2 years, right? Working, making good money.
Right.
So what was that experience like over those 2 years?
I think just like where you guys are at, you know, I was literally serving in the exact same way you guys are both serving. I was there. Well, I was going pretty hard, you know, and you guys go so hard, but I was at every single thing, you know, and man, I just was so burdened and it was going well. You know, there was a lot of affirmation from the people around me. Like, man, you're gifted at this. And that blessed me. And the kids, like God was moving through me as a volunteer through the lives of the kids. And it went from something I was like super rejected on to actually praying, God, would you, so it was obedience to just the volunteering process and discipleship process with the kids that it became a prayer saying, God, would you please open this door for me? And he did. He swung it wide open.
Wow.
And it was too soon. There were some circumstances. I won't share his story. He's an incredible man still in the community, Matt. But he didn't get fired or anything like that. But there was an incident that it was just best for him and his family to resign. And me and him needed more time together, matter of fact. And it led to a really painful first 5 years of ministry for me, is being thrown in that position and not be ready for it.
Wow.
It was really hard in the ministry.
How old were you when you were...
I was probably like 26.
Wow, that'd be like us right now.
Yeah.
I could not be a pastor right now.
Not me either.
That's incredible. You feel that way. Like that's probably correct.
Yeah.
But I think that ignorance, like I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
I thought I could do it, and it wasn't. It's not being humble. The ministry like suffered really bad under my leadership. You know, and it was the most painful time of my life, which means I've lived a very, what's the word when you lived a safe life and a good life? Like,
sheltered life.
Sheltered, but like very privileged life, I suppose.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think you were very sheltered.
Right.
I think you actually made the exact opposite point.
Yeah,
you
right.
weren't sheltered.
So like, it was even before Christ. As a Christian, it was the hardest thing I've ever walked through. It was so humiliating and painful, you know, and really hard, you know. And it wasn't just me, you know. It was like Matt was gone, you know. He was running the ministry, and then this other guy, Bo, got shifted out, you know. And so then I became the director of the youth center at 26, and I was coming from a volunteer status to that, you know. And the people around me were hardly saved, the employees, I think, you know, and they were on the way out. They were still there. They shouldn't have been there anymore. Not all of them, but some of them. And it was a really difficult team to lead. They didn't believe me. They didn't support me. It was a very lonely and bizarro time, you know. I got really screwed over a lot, you know, like when, backstabbings and painful. It was horrible. Like my first 5 years of ministry were absolutely horrible. But I will just say this. Tozer does say, like, before a man can be greatly used by God, he must be completely broken. And I think that's kind of what happened.
So like to go off of that like when you're put in this position right out of the gate, did your leadership skills grow exponentially because of it, or because there have been times in my life where I was put into a big leadership position and I never want to be a leader, and then I literally had to learn how to grow to be a leader like quickly because of the positions I was put into in life.
Yeah, which is cool, Isaac. I think that just reflects of you are a leader. You know, it's like you rise to the occasion, and it was just so tumultuous, man. It was like psychotic. It's not like how it is now at Calvary, like in the like it's a healthy ministry right now. You guys would have been blown away if you saw the people that were being paid to work there. You know, like it is crazy. So I don't know, man. Like, yeah, I think I was doing my best, man, but I was not a sharp leader at all. In a lot of ways, it sucks I left the ministry because now I'm actually maybe a little bit ready for it.
No, you hit the peak.
Yeah.
Dang. Yeah. Well, we've been going on for a little while. I feel like we're just scratching the surface too, which sucks.
You keep going. I'm fine. Yeah.
You sure?
Yep.
Well, we can put a time limit on how much longer you guys want to go.
Let's do like 15 more minutes.
Cool, sweet.
And then we'll wrap up.
Cool.
So I got a wife upstairs, so I don't want to.
Dude, you live here?
Yeah, I do.
He lives like literally 4 floors
3
above.
stories above this
I
room.
forgot that because we talked about working out. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so this kind of gets into the next question I was going to ask. So, what is? I mean, you kind of touch on it, but maybe you can elaborate a little more if you're willing or can. What are some of the challenges that you faced in full-time ministry that perhaps wouldn't be so obvious to someone who's not working in full-time ministry or doesn't have like a direct insight into working in full-time ministry?
Yeah. I would say the way your brain doesn't turn off is pretty alarming. Ministry has this pull on your head and your heart that I think is unlike any other profession. It's not the hardest job. There are way harder jobs out there, but it's a strange job, you know. As a youth pastor, you're not just managing you're dealing with minors, which is very delicate.
Yeah, youth ministry I think specifically is very unique.
Right. Yeah. And they typically pick clowns, 20-year-old clowns like me to do it. Which, like, at the time, I was a clown. In a lot of ways, I still am, but I'm finally gaining some maturity and wisdom.
Slightly more mature clown.
Like Joey Everington, the new pastor, he's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And he has the wisdom to do it.
Love Joey.
We should not be picking 22-year-olds to run youth ministry. Like, it's a bad decision. I hope we get away from it. And it's a pizza party, which is across the nation. It's not our youth group. We're very, I'm surprised kids like coming to our youth group. It's really boring if you're like not into Jesus, you know what I'm saying? So, which I know that's why you guys actually love it and are willing to be a part of it. It's because it's on the right track. But your brain doesn't turn off, man. And my wife is so shocked at how much more present I am. Like, I heard Chad Beach say, "Be wherever your feet are," and that's really hard to be in ministry because you're thinking about this teaching or this event or this conversation or this struggle that this person's going through. I would say, and you guys, I mean, maybe that's just natural for a person in a position of leadership. I'd say it's probably the same for you, Isaac. Is like you're always kind of thinking about work a little bit, So
yeah, I mean, you can't turn it off. You can't forget about it. Like when you get to that speed where you're constantly handling different things at once, it's detrimental to try to like shut your brain down, which is important sometimes to have rest, but dropping the ball hurts a lot more at times.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was actually another question that I wanted to ask. So how did marriage and or fatherhood, because your oldest boy he's only a few years older, like 5?
My oldest is 5. I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. Yeah.
Right. So how did marriage and or fatherhood affect your ministry, and what challenges and benefits did your own established family bring in service to the kingdom?
Yeah. I think that when you have kids, you want to have kids, right?
Yeah.
You want to have kids?
I want to get married first.
Hey, that's true.
But I'm going to have more on you than you and be very righteous, much more righteous than you, because I have more kids than you.
Hey,
dude,
right now you're more righteous than I am because you have more kids.
I'm 2 times more righteous. Yeah, your kids will like show you the love of the Father. It's a way that I don't want to take away from people that are not called to have kids. Some people are called to singleness, which is very godly. But there is a revelation of the Father's love you have when you have children. That I think helps you love others better too. When you see like how much you love your kids, and he loves you so much more than I love my kids. And it almost makes you understand his love more, where it empowers you to love others better. So that helped me in the ministry, and that having kids helped me in that way. Me and Brianna, we like, she used to work at Calvary, and she was the assistant director of women's ministry, and it was a really hard thing for us, because you guys never served with Brianna. And that was really hard for me as a husband and a pastor, and at times embarrassing. Like, I had this idea that she should be serving with me, and we even went to Pastor Dave about it.
Like both of you in serving youth ministry?
Yeah, I thought she should be by my side, which a lot of people do feel that way, and did feel that way. And it just wasn't a natural fit for her. And she didn't want to do it, And like, youth ministry is really hard, guys, and really awkward. Like,
it is awkward.
You guys are young men going to talk to 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, we don't do that in society.
I'm 25 and I feel old talking to
seriously
high schoolers.
Yeah.
Like, dude.
In a lot of ways, I think it's extremely what has and should be done. Like, that's why culture probably suffers, because that's not happening, is a 25-year-old going to a 13-year-old to instill godly values in them. Like what a great way to change the world, right?
Yeah.
But culturally, that's very weird and inappropriate.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I like embarrass the crap out of myself in the Melbourne Square Mall when I go up to teenagers and attempt to evangelize to them, and then the parents come up and they're like, "What is happening? Who are you?" And literally it's saying, "Who are you? Why are you talking to my son?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is weird. I'd be bummed out too."
Fair, valid.
And so, so youth ministry is hard, and she just didn't feel called to it.
Yeah.
And so, as kids were a blessing, it was hard on our marriage, her not being there. And since I've left, we had to like have a really hard talk of like, I'm like, "Hey, this wounded me," and she wept, and I think she regrets it. And but it's like, that's
regrets not serving in youth with you.
Yeah. I think if she'd go back, she would have done things differently, and we make mistakes. Have you guys ever seen the movie The Curious Case of Benjamin Button?
I've heard of it. But
yeah.
I've never
You guys should watch it. It'll wreck your heart, though. So be ready. And beautiful film, top 3 for me. And something that's said is that our lives are defined by our opportunities, even the ones we miss. And I think for her, she does look at it as like, man, like she wasn't even serving with me when we didn't have kids. It's not like she was at home taking care of the kids, She was being paid. She was a staff person being paid to be there. And so my mind couldn't, like, why does she not want to serve with me? So it was like, that was probably one of the hardest thorns in my side, was not having her by my side. And it's something we've grieved and have healed from, but that didn't happen until I exited ministry. That's been an interesting thing, is there were wounds I gathered in ministry that I don't think were able to be healed until I was out of it. That pain of betrayal, like I suffered, I was horribly betrayed in that 5 years. I was horribly treated by the people who were supposed to be my teammates. That healing didn't come until I left ministry. That was a thorn in my side. So yeah, as far as family goes, kids were a blessing. It was me and Brianna like would very much confess that it was an interesting thing to be married in youth ministry together. It's lonely at times, So
wow,
it's powerful, man.
It's just and I just want to bring an authentic, vulnerable conversation
Yeah.
at the table. That's why I'm
Yeah.
like, sharing some of the things I'm sharing is
No,
like,
No,
I
you
think it's real.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
especially for me, because I am fairly newly married within the last 8 months.
Mhm.
So, yeah, there is like a shift in my mindset of like, I think like time is the biggest thing. Like, how am I devoting the time my wife needs
Mhm.
while also attempting to do these other things? Like, this podcast is one of them. Like, this takes time away
Mm-hmm.
from my wife, and so I have to be very cautious of like not pulling too much time away from her. But then at the same time, there's that justification of like, well, this is, or let's say youth ministry, to be specific, like I'm using that's my service to the kingdom, and it makes me think back to what Paul said, like kind of on the basis of
Mhm.
those who are called to singleness, where it's, the one who is married has his mind set on things of this world rather than the
Mhm.
things
Absolutely,
of God's
yeah.
kingdom. And it's like, there really is like a wrestling that comes with it. And you have to be discerning is this what I call service actually harming my first ministry, which is my wife?
Yeah. It's a balance, but I just see you, Josh, and I see you, Isaac. Like, you guys thrive at discipleship of young people, and it's a calling, and it is a sacrifice. Even it is it's a sacrifice to your marriage. You are giving up time to invest into the kingdom, and it'd probably be a lot easier to be hanging out with Miriam and more fun and building that, But I do think that, what I've been crying at night for maybe like once a week is how fast my kids are growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have kids, it gives you a really interesting perspective on time. And a season's over before you even had, like, I wasn't done enjoying that, and it's gone.
Yeah. How old's Judah?
He's 2.
2? Yeah,
Wow.
he was like,
Yeah.
I think he was just born
Yeah.
when I moved here.
Yeah.
And then now he's like already 2.
He's a little person,
Yeah.
And the word the Father's brought to me is, don't fix your eyes on what is seen, but fix your eyes on what is unseen. And don't store up for yourself treasures on earth, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. And so I think Josh and people who process the sacrifice and the time and the commitment is this world in its present form is passing away, including your marriage one day to Miriam. And that sucks. That sucks so much. And it's because it's not the way it's supposed to be. You should have had eternity with Miriam here, And I think that's why it's painful to make the sacrifice to serve. But that is the investment into the eternal kingdom of heaven. And God does not. It's sinful to sacrifice our families on the altar of ministry too. People, church leaders, abuse staff and volunteers with that thought too. So it has to be a spirit-led conviction and balance. You are not called to neglect your bride. Like, Jesus said the poor you'll always have with you. There will always be more ministry to do. You only have one wife. I only have my one wife and my 2 boys. And that is my God-given responsibility as well. So I'm kind of speaking at both sides of my mouth, but I just want to bring balance to the table with it,
It reminds me of, I think it's in Timothy, where Paul says that a pastor, I mean, he doesn't say, I don't think he says pastor, but, the equivalent of a pastor back then is to be a husband with his house in order.
Yep.
And it makes me think of, like, there are examples of people who I've known, online or whatever, who are pastors, but their household isn't in order.
Yep.
And it's like, I feel like if you are forced to neglect your family because of your ministry, then I don't think you should be in ministry.
Right.
Because like your household isn't in order in that case.
Right.
So,
right. Wow. Yeah.
That's
like
1 Timothy 3.
Is that what it is?
Don't know the exact verses, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's just interesting because I don't know that I want to be a pastor, but I think just like, you know, I don't know. It's fascinating to me, like the call to ministry and into pastoral leadership, and I think it's a very misunderstood role within the church, even on behalf of those who are pastors. Not that I'm saying that you've misunderstood that role, but I don't know. Just like your experience kind of gives me insight into a role that I didn't have before. So
yeah, right on. Yeah,
cool. Well, should we go ahead and wrap it up? Man, we're gonna have to bring you back on because I want to. You know, there's a whole another arc of your life that we didn't even talk about.
Right?
You leaving ministry.
yeah, that's true. That's all good. But man, like I'm so grateful for the time we got to be warriors in the kingdom together. You know, it's like, man, you know, I talk about the really painful 5 years. Is like, it's like when people like you guys came around me, radical shift. Like it's like it was a blast. It was fun. We were effective for the kingdom, you know, and that happens when like godly men and women are willing to make the sacrifice. Yeah. So it was like, man, it was really fun doing it with you guys. You guys are just so wise. And like I said, I had the privilege of mentoring you guys, but it was just like, I mean, I was just there to listen and be an older brother. And, you know, I think you guys are just so good at just, you're obedient to the process, you know, and that's why God's going to so mightily keep using you guys. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming, man. That was awesome.
Well, you're one of our favorite people, so it was a pretty easy first guest. So,
like I said, we're Jackson fanboys. So.
It got us all to hang out too. It's been too long.
Yeah. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Remember, we do have an Instagram account, and we also have a YouTube account now as well. So if you don't have Spotify, you can listen on YouTube. But go ahead and follow the Instagram account too, at the Smithy Podcast, and go ahead and like and subscribe and follow and comment. And thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys later.
Peace.
Peace.